The alarm had been screaming for 6 hours straight. Park Do-hwan stood in the corridor of Corinth 7 station, watching hundreds of people push past him toward the docking bays. Families held tight to each other. Children cried. Old people moved as fast as their bodies allowed. Everyone had the same look in their eyes. Fear. The Valeth were coming. Do-hwan had seen pictures of what they did to colonies. The alien swarm moved through space like a disease, consuming everything in their path. Metal, flesh, bone. They took it all and left nothing behind but empty rocks floating in the dark. He pressed himself against the wall as a group of engineers ran past. He knew their faces. He had shared meals with them, fixed their equipment, listened to their complaints about management. Now they did not even look at him. All essential personnel report to Transport Base 7, the announcement repeated. Final evacuation in 90 minutes. Do-hwan was not essential. He was a maintenance worker. He fixed broken pipes and cleaned filters and replaced worn-out parts and machines that nobody thought about until they stopped working. For 15 years, he had kept this station running. But when the evacuation list came out, his name was not on it. He walked slowly toward the lower decks while everyone else ran upward. There was no point in fighting the crowd. The transports had limited space. Important people went first. Scientists, doctors, military officers, wealthy colonists who had paid for priority seats. Maintenance workers waited at the back of the line that never moved. He found the others in a storage room on Deck 14. 17 people sitting on crates and old equipment, their faces showing the same understanding. They had been left behind. Nari was there. She was a cargo handler, a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and arms strong from years of heavy lifting. She looked at Do-hwan when he entered and nodded once. "You too," she said. It was not a question. "Me too." Han Jisu sat in the corner, her medical kit on her lap. She was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes that looked too tired for her age. She had been a technician in the medical bay, not a real doctor. Not essential enough. Kwon Tai-ho leaned against the wall, his bad leg stretched out in front of him. He had been station security once, before an accident left him with a limp. Now he guarded supply closets and checked identification at doors nobody used. There were others. A cook named Shin Minho, 2 cleaning staff whose names Do-hwan did not know yet, a communications technician named Bae Yoonji, who was barely 20 years old and still had tears on her cheeks. They sat in silence and listened to the station shake as transport after transport launched into space. Each rumble meant more people escaping. Each rumble meant they were more alone. After 3 hours, the rumbling stopped. "That's it," Nari said quietly. "They're gone." Yoonji started crying again. Jisoo moved to sit beside her, putting an arm around the young woman's shoulders. Tai-ho stared at the ceiling and said nothing. Do-hwan stood up. "The Valeth won't reach this system for at least 2 weeks, he said. "Their swarm moves slowly. They take everything from one place before moving to the next." 2 weeks, Minho laughed bitterly. 2 weeks to sit here and wait to die. Or 2 weeks to find another way. Everyone looked at Do-hwan. He was not a leader. He had never given orders or made important decisions. He was just a man who fixed things. "What other way?" Nari asked. "The transports are gone. The shuttles are gone. Everything that flies is gone. Not everything." Do-hwan had worked on this station for 15 years. He knew every corner, every forgotten storage bay, every piece of equipment that had been pushed aside and forgotten, including the thing sitting in Cargo Bay 19 on the lowest deck. "Follow me." They walked through empty corridors. The station felt like a tomb now, lights flickering, air recyclers humming their lonely song. Their footsteps echoed off metal walls that had held thousands of people just hours ago. Cargo Bay 19 was locked with an old code that Do-hwan had memorized years ago. The door groaned open, revealing darkness. He found the light switch, and the bay flickered to life. The ship sat in the center like a sleeping animal. It was old, very old. The hull was covered in scratches and dents. The paint faded to a color that might have once been blue. One of the engine pods hung at a wrong angle. The cockpit windows were dark and dusty. On the side, someone had tried to remove the name, but Do-hwan could still read it. Heta, what is that? Yoonji asked, her tears forgotten. A patrol ship, Do-hwan said. From the border wars, maybe 60 years ago. They decommissioned it and left it here for salvage. But nobody ever came to take it apart. Nari walked around the ship slowly, her experienced eyes taking in every detail. The reactor housing is cracked. The main thrusters are missing half their components. The navigation array looks like someone took a hammer to it. She turned to Do-hwan. This thing will never fly. Maybe? Taiho pushed himself off the wall. We need certainty, not maybe. We need a plan that works. Do-hwan walked to the ship and placed his hand on the cold metal. He had fixed countless machines in his life. Broken recyclers, dead generators, systems that engineers had declared impossible to repair. He understood machines in a way that he had never understood people. Machines were honest. They broke for reasons that could be found and fixed. I spent 15 years fixing things that other people gave up on, he said. This is just a bigger job. It's suicide, Minho said. Staying here is suicide. Do-hwan turned to face them. The Veilith are coming. In 2 weeks, they will be here, and they will take this station apart piece by piece. We can sit in that storage room and wait for them. Or we can try. Silence filled the cargo bay. 17 people looked at a broken ship and a maintenance worker who thought he could make it fly. Nari was the first to speak. What do you need? Do-hwan almost smiled. Everything. I need everything this station has left to give. She nodded and rolled up her sleeves. Then let's start looking. One by one, the others stood. Not because they believed the ship would fly. Not because they thought they would survive. But because doing something was better than doing nothing. And because Park Do-hwan, the man who fixed broken things, looked at that dead ship like he could already see it flying among the stars. The first week was the hardest. Do-hwan slept 3 hours a night, sometimes less. He lived inside the Heta, crawling through its narrow maintenance tunnels, mapping every wire and pipe and broken component. The ship was worse than he had expected. Years of neglect had turned small problems into big ones. Rust had eaten through critical joints. Rats had chewed through cables. Water from a long-ago leak had damaged the computer systems beyond easy repair. But Do-hwan did not stop. He could not stop. Every morning, he gave the others their tasks. Nari knew the station better than anyone. She remembered cargo manifests from years ago, knew which storage rooms held forgotten supplies, which sections had been sealed and abandoned. She led teams through the empty decks, bringing back anything useful. Power cells from old mining equipment, wire from communication relays, computer chips from entertainment systems, metal plates from decommissioned furniture. Nothing was too small. Nothing was useless. Taiho surprised everyone. His bad leg made him slow, but his memory was sharp. He had been security for 20 years before his accident. He knew every hidden room, every secret cache where people had stored things they did not want found. Weapons, medical supplies, emergency rations that someone had been saving for a bad day. A bad day, Taiho said when he showed Do-hwan the food supplies. I think this counts. Jisoo set up a small medical station near the cargo bay. There were injuries every day. Cut hands, burned fingers, exhaustion that made people clumsy. She treated them all with gentle efficiency, never complaining, always ready with a kind word. Yoonji became Do-hwan's second set of hands. She was young and scared, but she was also smart. She understood electronics in a way that made Do-hwan grateful. Together, they rebuilt the navigation computer from 3 broken units, spending long nights connecting circuits and testing systems. "This code is ancient," Yoonji said one night, staring at lines of programming on a cracked screen. "I don't even recognize half of these commands. Can you learn them?" She looked at the screen for a long moment. "I can try." Trying was all any of them could do. The main reactor was the biggest problem. The crack in its housing meant they could not run it at full power without risking an explosion. Do-hwan spent 2 days thinking about it, sketching solutions on pieces of scrap metal, throwing away idea after idea. The answer came from Minho, the cook. "When I was young," Minho said, watching Do-hwan stare at the reactor, "my grandmother had an old stove. The heating element was cracked, but we couldn't afford a new one. So she wrapped it in clay and metal strips, held together for 10 more years. Do-hwan looked at him. "Show me." They used a mixture of emergency hull sealant and metal powder, applied in layers around the cracked housing. It was not elegant. It was not proper engineering. But when they tested the reactor at low power, it held. "It won't survive heavy use," Do-hwan warned the others. "We'll need to be careful with our power consumption." "Careful," Nari repeated. "On a ship held together by sealant and hope." Of course. Day by day, the HFY came back to life. Do-hwan rebuilt the primary thrusters using engines from cargo-loading vehicles. They were not designed for space travel, but he modified them, adjusted their fuel intake, reinforced their housings. The ship would not be fast, but it would move. The weapons were beyond saving. The old patrol ship had carried missiles and energy cannons. The DOE systems had been stripped decades ago. Do-hwan did not try to replace them. Fighting was not the plan. Running was the plan. On day 30, they powered up the main systems for the first time. The lights flickered. Strange sounds came from deep inside the ship, metal groaning and settling. Warning lights appeared on every console, red and yellow and orange, telling them all the things that were wrong. But the engines hummed. The life support started cycling air. The navigation computer displayed a map of local space, outdated but functional. "It works," Yoonji whispered. "It actually works." Do-hwan sat in the pilot's chair and looked at the controls. They were simple compared to modern ships. Manual overrides for everything. Physical switches and buttons instead of touchscreens. A ship built in a time when people did not trust computers to fly for them. "It's not ready yet," he said. "The hull needs more work. The fuel lines are unstable. We have maybe 60% efficiency on the engines." "But it works," Jisoo said, and there was something in her voice that had not been there before. Something that sounded like hope. That night, they ate together in the cargo bay. Real food from Taiho's secret cache, heated on a portable stove Minho had repaired. They talked and laughed, and for a few hours, forgot about the swarm moving toward them through the darkness of space. Nari sat beside Do-hwan, both of them leaning against the Hita's landing strut. "I didn't think you could do it," she admitted. "When I first saw this wreck, I thought you were crazy. Maybe I am, maybe." She looked up at the ship that had been dead and was now breathing. "But it's a good kind of crazy." Day 40 came. Then 45. Long-range sensors, barely functioning, showed the Veilous swarm entering the outer edges of the system. They had 2 days, maybe 3. Do-hwan worked without sleep. Final adjustments, last repairs, desperate improvements. The others helped where they could, their hands raw from work, their bodies exhausted beyond measure. On day 47, he called everyone to the cargo bay. "It's time," he said. 17 people boarded the HFY. They had no luggage, no possessions worth keeping. Just themselves and the tools of their survival. Do-hwan sat in the pilot chair. Yoonji took the communication station. Taeho watched the sensors. Nari stood behind Do-hwan, her hand on the back of his seat. Opening cargo bay doors, Yoonji announced .space appeared before them. Cold and dark and infinite. Engines ready, Do-hwan said. Everyone hold on. They had to lift it off the deck. It shuddered and groaned, its old frame protesting the movement. Warning lights flashed. Something in the back made a sound that Do-hwan did not like. But the ship flew. They passed through the cargo bay doors and into open space. Behind them, the station grew smaller, the place that had been their home and almost their grave. Jump coordinates set, Yoonji said. We have enough fuel for one jump. Maybe two if we're lucky. Then let's be lucky, Do-hwan replied. The Hedda, dead for 60 years, abandoned and forgotten, impossible to save, turned toward the stars and flew. The jump through faster than light space felt like being turned inside out. The Hedda shook so hard that Do-hwan thought it would break apart. Lights flickered, systems screamed warnings, and somewhere in the engine room, something exploded with a sound like thunder. Then it was over. They dropped out of FTL into a new star system, the ship spinning slowly, smoke filling the corridors. Damage report, Do-hwan called out, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Secondary power coupling is gone, Yoonji answered from her station. Life support is running on backup. We lost one of the cargo loader engines completely. Injuries? Jisoo's voice came through the internal speakers. Bruises and cuts. Nothing serious. We were lucky. Lucky. Do-hwan almost laughed. They were floating in an unknown system with a crippled ship and almost no fuel. Lucky was not the word he would choose. Where are we? Nari asked. Taeho studied the sensor display with narrowed eyes. The Johan system. Mayan colony. Or it was. Before the evacuation orders. Is anyone still here? The answer came before Taeho could speak. The sensors lit up with contacts. Ships. Many ships. 12 civilian transports, Taeho reported, his voice growing tight. Refugee convoy. They're being followed. Do-hwan looked at the display. Behind the civilian ships, 3 shapes moved with smooth, terrible grace. They were not built like human vessels. They looked organic, grown rather than constructed, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt the eyes. Veilless scouts. They're hunting them, Yoonji said. The convoy is too slow. They can't escape. Silence fell over the bridge. 12 ships. Thousands of people. Families running from the same death that had chased them from Corinth 7. We can't help them, Minho said from the doorway. We have no weapons. We have one working engine. We're barely alive ourselves. He was right. Do-hwan knew he was right. The smart thing to do was stay quiet, drift without power, hope the Valith did not notice them. Wait until the convoy was gone, one way or another, and then limp to the nearest safe port. The smart thing. Do-hwan looked at the display again. One of the civilian ships was smaller than the others. A family transport, maybe, running for their lives while monsters closed in behind them. Yoonji, he said, can you broadcast on military frequencies? Yes, but we don't have any military codes. We have old ones. From when the ship was active. Broadcast them. All of them. Every code in the database. Yoonji stared at him. Those codes are 60 years out of date. No one will believe them. The Valith won't know that. They intercept communications, but they don't understand context. They'll see military signals and wonder what they mean. Nari understood first. You want to confuse them. I want to scare them. Do-hwan turned to the engineering station. How much power can we push through our remaining engine? More than it can handle, Taiho answered. We burn it out in minutes. I don't need minutes. I need seconds. Do-hwan started working the controls. We're going to make ourselves look big. Really big. The Valeth judged threats by power output. If we overload everything, dump all our reserves into the engine and broadcast systems, we'll look like a cruiser on their sensors. A cruiser made of garbage and prayers, Nari said. They don't know that. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the only idea Do-hwan had. The crew moved without argument. Maybe they trusted him. Maybe they just wanted to do something other than watch people die. Whatever the reason, they worked. Yoonji flooded local space with ancient military codes, distress signals, fleet coordination commands from a war that ended before she was born. Taiho redirected every bit of power they could spare to the engines and sensors. Do-hwan pushed the HFY forward, its frame shaking, its single working engine burning white-hot. The Valeth scouts noticed. On the sensor display, the 3 alien vessels slowed. They were communicating with each other. Do-hwan knew. Sharing information. Trying to understand what this new contact was. They're confused, Eunji reported. Their formation is breaking. Good. Keep broadcasting. The HFY screamed through space, trailing sparks and burning fuel. Warning lights covered every surface. The temperature inside the ship was rising. Do-hwan could smell something burning, could feel the deck plates vibrating beneath his feet. But the Valeth hesitated. Their sensors told them a patrol ship was approaching with the power signature of something much larger. Their communications intercepts showed military activity, codes they could not break. They were hunters, but they were also careful. Their swarm did not survive by taking unnecessary risks. One of the scouts turned away. Then another. They're retreating, Taiho said. All 3 of them. They're pulling back to regroup. Yoonji let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. It worked. I can't believe it worked. The refugee convoy did not waste time. The 12 ships accelerated, pushing their engines to maximum, racing toward the system's jump point. Do-hwan watched them go, feeling something strange in his chest. Pride, maybe. Or just relief. Follow them, Nari said. Can we follow them? If we shut down everything except basic life support and navigation, we might have enough fuel to make one more jump. They drifted behind the convoy. A broken ship grew by discarded people, watching the civilians escape to safety. The Valeth scouts regrouped at the edge of the system, waiting, watching. But they did not attack. The convoy reached the jump point. One by one, the ships vanished into FTL, carrying their passengers to somewhere safer. The last ship paused before jumping. A message came through on the emergency channel. Unknown vessel, this is Transport Songbird. We don't know who you are, but you saved us. Thank you. Thank you. Then they were gone. Do-hwan sat back in his chair, exhaustion hitting him all at once. His hands were shaking. His vision was blurry. He had been awake for almost 2 days, running on nothing but fear and determination. The engine is dead, Taiho reported quietly. Completely burned out. We're drifting. Life support will last a few hours on backup power, Eunji added. After that, they would die. Slowly, in the cold and dark, waiting for the Valeth to come finish what they started. Do-hwan closed his eyes. They had saved thousands of people today. Whatever happened next, that mattered. That was real. There's a mining station on the 3rd moon, Nari said. Abandoned when the evacuation started. If we use the attitude thrusters, we might be able to reach it. Might? It's better than sitting here. Do-hwan opened his eyes. Nari was right. It was better than sitting here. Better than giving up. Better than accepting death when there was still a chance, no matter how small. Set a course, he said. Let's see what we can find. The HFY, broken and burning, turned toward the distant moon. 17 people who refused to stop fighting for one more day, one more hour, one more breath. Behind them, the Veilith scouts watched and waited. They had encountered something strange today. Something that did not fit their patterns. They would remember. 6 months changed everything. The mining station on the third moon had given them what they needed to survive. Fuel reserves left behind in the evacuation. Spare parts that nobody had thought to take. Food and water enough for months. And ships. 3 small mining vessels, damaged but not destroyed, abandoned when their crews fled. Do-hwan took them apart. Every useful piece, every working system, every scrap of technology that could strengthen the HFY. The ship grew like a living thing, changing shape, gaining new abilities. Word spread through the refugee networks. Encrypted messages, whispered stories, desperate hope passed from station to station. A ghost ship had appeared in the Johann system. It had faced 3 Veilith scouts alone and made them run. Nobody knew who crewed it. Nobody knew where it came from. People started calling it different names. The Phantom, the Wanderer, the Impossible Ship, but the crew called it what it had always been. HAE. Others found them. Shin Yuna was first, a pilot whose squadron had been destroyed protecting an evacuation. She had been floating in an escape pod for 11 days when the HFY found her, more dead than alive. I saw your ship on my sensors, she told Do-hwan after Jisoo brought her back from the edge of death. I thought I was dreaming. Ships don't look like that. No, Do-hwan agreed. They don't. Yuna stayed. She became their primary pilot, a military training making her invaluable in the dangerous flights between systems. Imhyuk came next. An engineer who had escaped a prison transport when the Veilith attacked. His crimes were small desperation during the early days of the evacuation. But he knew machines almost as well as Do-hwan did. I can help, he said simply when he found them. He could. He did. Show my Ray was different. She was a scientist who had spent years studying the Veilith before her research station fell. She came to them with data, with knowledge, with understanding of how the alien swarm thought. They're not evil, she explained one night as the crew gathered to listen. They don't hate us. They consume because that's what they do. It's not personal. We're just food. That doesn't make me feel better, Minho said. It's not supposed to, but it helps us fight them. Myre pulled up images on a salvage display. The Veilith have patterns. Their hive mind processes information in specific ways. They predict threats based on past experience. But humans, she smiled slightly. Humans are unpredictable. We do things that don't make sense. We fight when we should run. We hope when we should despair. That sounds like us, Nari said. Exactly. Every time we do something unexpected, we break their patterns. We become harder to predict, harder to consume. Do-hwan listened carefully. He was not a scientist or a soldier, but he understood patterns. He understood how things worked. And he understood how to break them. The HFY became something new over the following months. Do-hwan used Marie's knowledge to redesign every system. Weapons salvaged from a destroyed military vessel, modified to fire in patterns the Veilith had never seen. Shield generators from a corporate research station, tuned to frequencies that confused alien sensors. An experimental stealth coding that Yoonji had decoded from intercepted research files, making the ship appear and disappear at will. The crew grew to 43. Pilots, engineers, fighters, medics. All of them abandoned. All of them discarded. All of them refusing to accept the ending that the universe had written for them. They fought, not direct battles. The Hetta was strong now, but it could not face a full veilless swarm. Instead, they struck from shadows. They appeared where the aliens did not expect, hit fast and hard, and vanished before retaliation could come. They saved a research station by making the Veilith think a human fleet was approaching. They rescued 3 transports by jamming alien communications at a critical moment. They destroyed a scout vessel by tricking it into flying through an asteroid field. Each victory was small. Each victory was impossible. And each victory spread through the networks, growing bigger with every telling. They say there's a ghost ship hunting the Veilith. Una reported one day, reading intercepted communications. They say it appears from nowhere, kills with impossible accuracy, and disappears before anyone can find it. That sounds dramatic, Dowan said. It sounds like a legend. Myre found him that night in the engine room, doing maintenance on systems that did not need maintenance. Dowan worked when he was thinking. It helped him focus. You're building something, she said. I'm always building something, not the ship. She sat on a crate and watched him work. You're building a story, something the Veilith can't understand. Every time we do something unexpected, something that doesn't follow their patterns, we become more dangerous in their minds. Dowan stopped working. She was right. He had not planned it that way, but she was right. I'm just a mechanic, he said. I fix what's broken. What's broken is hope, Nari said from the doorway. Dowan had not heard her approach. For millions of people hiding in stations and ships and colonies, waiting for the swarm to come, they need something to believe in, something that tells them the fight isn't over. Dowan looked at his hands. They were scarred from years of work, stained with grease and oil, rough from handling tools and metal. Mechanics' hands. Simple hands, but those hands had built something extraordinary. Not just a ship, but an idea. A story. A myth. The Veilith have destroyed hundreds of species, he said quietly. They've consumed worlds older than human civilization. What makes us think we can be different? Myre smiled. Because we don't make sense. Because a maintenance worker looked at a dead ship and saw a possibility. Because 17 abandoned people refused to die quietly. She stood and walked to the door, pausing beside Nari. The Veilith have patterns. They have logic. They have experience from 1,000,000 years of consumption. She looked back at Dowan. They don't have you. After she left, Nari stayed. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe, watching Dowan the way she had watched him since the beginning. Do you believe her? She asked. Dowan picked up his tools and went back to work. I believe that we're still alive. I believe that people are counting on us. And I believe that tomorrow, there will be something else that needs fixing. Nari nodded slowly. Good enough. She left him alone with his machines and his thoughts and the quiet hum of a ship that should not exist. Carrying people who refused to be forgotten. Flying toward a future that nobody had written yet. 1 year after the evacuation left them for dead, the distress call came. Dowan was in the engine room when Yunji's voice echoed through the ship. Her words were steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. All hands to the bridge. Emergency. He found the crew gathered around the main display, their faces lit by the glow of a dying world. Aram 4. A colony of 2 million people. Too far from the main evacuation routes, too small to matter to the military planners. The Veilith swarm had found them. Not scouts this time. Not a hunting party. The full swarm. Thousands of alien vessels moved through the system like a disease, spreading toward the colony world. The planet's defenses were fighting back, but they were losing. Slowly. Inevitably. The combined human fleets have written them off, Una reported, her pilot's eyes reading the tactical data. They say it's too far. Too costly. They're not coming. Silence fell over the bridge. 43 people looked at the display, at the impossible numbers, at the death sentence hanging over 2 million lives. "We can't fight that," Hugh said. "No one can fight that." He was right. Every calculation, every tactical analysis, every piece of logic said the same thing. Flying into that swarm was suicide. The HFY had grown powerful over the past year, but it was still one ship against an armada. Do Hwan watched the display. He thought about Corinth 7, about sitting in a storage room waiting to die, about the moment he had decided to try anyway. "Gather everyone in the cargo bay," he said. They came. 43 souls who had found purpose in a ship that should not exist. Pilots and engineers, fighters and medics, cooks and cleaners. Abandoned people who had become something more. Do-hwan stood before them, this maintenance worker who had never wanted to lead anyone. "You all know what's happening at Harem 4, he said. "You all know the numbers. What we're facing. What it means." Nobody spoke. "I'm not going to order anyone to come. This isn't a military ship, and I'm not your commander. I'm just a mechanic who got lucky." He paused, looking at the faces he had come to know so well over the past year. Nari with her sharp eyes. Jisoo with her kind heart. Yoonji, no longer the crying girl from Corinth 7, but a woman of steel and fire. All of them, every single one. But I'm going, because somewhere on that planet, there's another maintenance worker sitting in a storage room. Another group of forgotten people, waiting for someone to remember them. And I know what that feels like. Taiho was the first to step forward. His bad leg made him slow, but his voice was strong. "I'm too old to start being careful now." Yuna joined him. Then Hyuk, then Mireille. One by one, they stepped forward until all 43 stood together. Nari smiled. "You didn't really think we'd let you go alone, did you?" The HFY jumped into the harem system 3 hours later. The swarm detected them immediately. Thousands of alien vessels, a cloud of death spreading across space, turned their attention to this single ship that dared to challenge them. Do-hwan had spent the past year preparing for this moment. "All systems ready," Yoonji reported. "Weapons hot," Yuna added. "Shields at maximum," Hyuk confirmed. Do-hwan sat in the pilot's chair, his hands steady on the controls. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he said. One word. Over and over. Yoonji nodded. "What word?" "HFY." The name echoed through space. The ancient name of a creature from Korean legends, a beast that protected the innocent and devoured evil. A name given to a forgotten patrol ship decades ago by someone who probably never imagined what it would become. The swarm hesitated. Their hive mind processed this new data, trying to understand, trying to predict. Then the HFY did something impossible. It split apart. The modifications that Do-hwan had made over the past year, the salvage and the improvements and the desperate innovations, had all been building toward this moment. The ship separated into 5 distinct sections, each one connected to the others by invisible threads of communication, each one flying independently while thinking as one. 5 targets where there had been one. 5 impossible things confusing sensors that expected patterns and logic. The violet swarm broke. Not completely. Not forever. But in that moment of confusion, the HFY struck. The 5 sections wove through the alien formation like dancers, weapons firing in patterns that no hive mind could predict. They appeared and disappeared, the stealth coating making them ghosts on veilless sensors. They struck at weak points that Mireille had identified, breaking the communication chains that held the swarm together. Around the planet, the colony's defenders saw their chance. Ships that had been retreating turned and fought. Ground batteries that had been falling silent came back to life. 2 million people who had been waiting to die suddenly found reason to hope. The battle lasted for 3 days. 3 days of impossible fighting. 3 days of a single ship, broken into pieces, holding back an alien swarm. 3 days of 43 people, refusing to accept the mathematics of their own destruction. On the 3rd day, the human fleet arrived. They had not planned to come. The admirals had made their calculations, counted their losses, written off HFY as acceptable sacrifice. But word had spread. The ghost ship was fighting. The myth was real. And suddenly, the politics changed. Suddenly, abandoning HFY meant abandoning the story that had given humanity hope. The fleet came. The swarm broke completely. Do-hwan barely remembered the hours after the battle. The HFY reassembled but barely functioning, limping into orbit around the colony world. Medical ships rushing to help. Military vessels establishing a defensive perimeter. An admiral demanded to speak with the commanding officer. They met in the HFY's cargo bay. The same bay where 17 people had once stared at a dead ship and decided to try anyway. Admiral Cho was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She looked around the cargo bay, at the patched walls and improvised systems, at the crew that did not look like soldiers. "This is your ship?" she asked. "This is our home," Do-hwan replied. "I read the reports. What you did, it shouldn't have been possible. A lot of things shouldn't be possible." The admiral studied him for a long moment. "You're not military. You're not trained. You're a maintenance worker who somehow turned a salvage wreck into the most effective weapon against the Vileth we've ever seen." She shook her head. "How?" Do-hwan thought about the question. He thought about Corinth 7, about the storage room, about the moment everything changed. "Someone once told me that the Vileth are logical. They predict threats based on patterns. They don't understand things that don't make sense." He looked around at his crew, his family, his people. "Humans don't make sense. We hope when we should despair. We fight when we should run. We look at broken things and see possibility." The admiral nodded slowly. "What will you do now?" "We can offer you commissions. Official support. Resources." Do-hwan almost smiled. "There are other systems out there. Other forgotten colonies. Other people who got left behind and are waiting for someone to remember them. And you're going to save them all?" "I'm going to try." The HFY left orbit the next day, flying toward the edge of the system, toward the next desperate call for help. It was not a military vessel. It defied classification. It continued to appear wherever the abandoned needed someone to believe in. And in the deepest reaches of space, where the Vileth swarm still lurked and planned their next consumption, something new existed in their collective mind. Fear. For the first time in a million years of consumption, the swarm was afraid. Afraid of a ship that should not fly. Afraid of humans who refused to be logical. Afraid of a mechanic who looked at impossible things and made them real. In the cargo bay of the HFY, someone had scratched words into the metal wall. Nobody knew who had written them. Maybe it did not matter. The words said, "They left us with nothing. So we built everything." And somewhere among the stars, a legend flew on, carrying hope to those who had none.